Hello everyone. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about different kinds of parenting. I will begin with the simplest way of parenting, and then I will deal with more advanced kinds of it. The simplest form of parent you can do in After Effects is layer parenting. This is my background layer. I've nothing to do with it now. I lock it to keep it from being selected. This is the layer of sun, which is in the center of the comp. The next layer is the earth, which I want to parent it to the layer of sun. For layer parenting, I only have to use this tool called Pick Whip. I click on it and drag and drop it on the layer meant to be the parent's layer. Then, as you see in the section Parents and Link of the Earth layer, the sun layer is selected as the parent's layer. And any change made in parent's layer will automatically be made in the child layer. As you see, when I change the position of the sun layer, the earth layer changes too. Or when I increase the scale of the parent layer, the scale of child layer increases too. This is also true about rotation. As you see, anchor point affects both layers. The last option, which is opacity, is an exception in this regard, because as you see, the child layer doesn't follow the parent layer in opacity. That is, you can set the opacity on 0 for the parent layer, while the opacity of child layer remains 100. It doesn't change. So, in layer parenting, the child layer follows the parent layer in all the values of transform except opacity. Now I want the earth layer to rotate around the sun layer. To do this, the only thing I have to do is to activate the rotation of sun and then rotate it. I can easily rotate the earth layer around the sun's layer. Well, now I want to keep the sun's layer from rotating because it doesn't look interesting. I want the sun layer to be fixed and I want only the earth layer to rotate around the sun. To do this, I use Null object. I create a Null object and place it right in the center of the sun layer. And I parent the earth layer to it. And then rotate the Null layer. The earth rotates around the sun. Now, if I want the moon layer to rotate around the earth layer, I should parent the moon layer to the earth layer. And now when I rotate the Null layer, you see both layers rotate. I can do the same for Mars. I parent it to the Null, so it orbits along with the Null layer. Here, the Mars disappears from the screen, so I decrease the scale so that the Mars can be seen in the screen from different angles. Let's rotate it now. That's right. So, this was the first and the simplest form of parenting called layer parenting. The next level is properties parenting. For example, if I want to parent rotation only to rotation, I should choose Null and I activate its rotation. I do it for the Earth too. And now I want to parent the rotation of Earth layer to the rotation of the Null layer. To do this, I use Pick Whip. Or you can hold Alt and click on the rotation of the Earth layer and use this Pick Whip. Parent it to the rotation property of the Null layer. Here it doesn't parent to the Null layer, rather it is parented only to the specific property that you want. So I will leave it here. Now if I rotate the Null, you see the Earth layer is rotating around itself as well as rotating around the sun. As you can see, the moon, which is child of the Earth, is moving around the Earth. And when the Null layer rotates once, the Earth layer also rotates around itself once. Now, if I want the rotation of Earth around itself to be twice or 3 times the rotation of Null object, at the end of the expression created for rotation of the Earth, I should create a star, which means multiplication, and you can multiply it by any number. For example, 2 times. As you see, the rotation of null object is set on 1, while the rotation of the Earth is set on 2. Let me set it on 0 again and rotate it so you can see. Its rotation around itself is increased. Now, let's set it on 10, which means 10 times. You see the rotation of Earth around itself has significantly increased. I can do the same with the Mars layer. I parent its rotation to the rotation of null object. And now, if I rotate it, you see the Mars starts rotating around itself as well. You want it to be 5 times the rotation of null object. Let me add the point that there is no limitation in properties parenting. That is, you don't necessarily have to parent the rotation of Earth layer to the rotation of null object layer. You can parent it to any property that you want in transform of null object. Suppose I want to parent the rotation of Earth layer to the opacity of null object. If I rotate the rotation of null object, the Earth layer doesn't rotate, because its rotation is not parented to the rotation of null object. When I increase opacity, it starts to rotate. And it doesn't rotate more than 100 degrees because 100 is the maximum value possible for opacity. Now I parent it to the position of null object. As soon as I parent rotation to the position of null object, it rotates 2 rounds and 248 degrees. This is because when you parent rotation, which is a single axis property, to a dual axis property, the value for the first axis of null object or parent layer is set as the value for the rotation of Earth layer. For example, if I set it on 100, this becomes 100 as well. But because the position of null object is changed, the layers parented to it will move too. I hit Ctrl Z. Note, if I move it on x-axis, the Earth rotates. If I do it on y-axis, you see there will be no rotation, because rotation is in fact parented to the x-axis of null object. To make it clear, let's look at another example about properties parenting. In these Ferris wheels, I want the main wheel to rotate. I want these small cabins to rotate as well. So, what should I do? The first thing to do is to select all the cabins and parent them to the layer of the main Ferris wheel. By rotating the wheel, you can see all the layers move with it. But this is not true, because when I rotate the Ferris wheels, the cabins should remain vertical, not crooked. To solve this problem, let me choose cabin 1 and hide the other cabins. I activate its rotation. Now, when the wheel rotates, I want this layer to rotate too, and I want it to be constantly vertical. So I parent the rotation of layer to the rotation of wheel layer. So in cabin 1, both the layer and the rotation property are parented to the layer and rotation property of the wheel. Now, if I rotate the wheel layer, you see the cabin rotates as well, but it rotates the opposite direction. When the wheel rotates right, the cabin should rotate left, not right. To remove this problem, at the end of the expression, I add star means multiplication, -1 to reverse the rotation. Now, if I rotate, you will see the cabin rotates along with it correctly. To fix the other cabins, right-click on the rotation. Click on Copy Expression only and select other layers of the cabins. Show the rotation and select the rotation of other cabins and press Ctrl V, so that the same expression is pasted for the other cabins. Now all cabins are rotating correctly. And no matter if you rotate left or right, all cabins rotate correctly. Well, let's go to the next example. The example I'm going to talk about is this plan. I used this plan in one of my projects. I wanted to create this scene, but I faced a problem. When I wanted to parent a layer to another layer, for example, when I wanted to parent the spray layer to the hand layer, and then parent the spray tip to the spray bottle, and then I wanted to parent the particle's position point to the spray tip for doing, I created a null object. I parented to the layer of spray tip, and I wanted to parent the position of particle to anchor point of the null object. But every time I wanted to do it, I failed. Why? Let me disable this expression. Now the main point or its position is here. I place it here so you can see it. As you see, it is spraying the particles here without any movement. To parent the particles to the spray tip, I activate the position of null object, and in the particles section, I parented the position of particles to position of null object. So I use pickwhip to parent this to position of null object. And after clicking, the position of particle was placed here instead of here. And it was not right. To do these kinds of parenting correctly, I need some information. I'd better look at this plan first and talk about commands toComp, toWorld, and fromComp. So you understand why by copying the position of child layer and pasting it on the position of another layer, it cannot be placed in a position of the child layer. In this comp, I have created 3 null objects. As you can see, the green one is layer A, the blue one is B, and the red one is C. I activate their positions. As you see, the position of A is 660 by 540, B is 960 by 540, and C is 1260 by 540. Let me note that in After Effects, there are 2 kinds of spaces. One is comp space and 2 is layer space. If I select layer A and set its X and Y on 0, this null object or layer A will be here. That is, the comp will start here. The first pixel of the comp will start here, and its X reaches to 1920 pixel here, and its Y reaches 1080 here. Whenever in this comp I place my layer, in proportion to the comp, a coordinate is created for it in its position. Let me take it back to its original place. The same happened to the other layers and whatever that you have in the comp. As you see, now the position of layer B is 960 by 540. It is its coordinate in proportion to the comp. But when I parent it to layer A, its position changes. That is, it goes into the layer space and loses its comp coordinate. And now its position is made clear in proportion to layer A. If I set its X and Y on 0, the anchor point of layer B will be at this point of layer A. The position of layer B is in proportion to its parent or layer A. Now I know about these 2 kinds of spaces. So if I parent the position of layer C to the position of layer B, there will be a problem. Layer C is in comp space, but layer B is in layer space. So parenting the position of layer C to position of layer B will not work correctly. You will see layer C is here now, but it must be on the anchor point of layer B. To solve this problem, I have to use expression and toComp command. As the name indicates, toComp converts the coordinate of the layer that is in the space layer to comp coordinate. In order to parent this layer to layer B, I should erase transform from here and type toComp. And in toComp parentheses, I should specify the location of layer C with regard to layer B. For example, if I want layer C to be on the anchor point of layer B, I should type transform.anchorPoint. That is, the value of position of layer C is the position of layer B. I mean the layer B whose coordinate is converted to comp space, and the location of layer C is at the anchor point of layer B. As you see, layer C is placed exactly on layer B. If I within parentheses, instead of transform anchor point, I type 2 brackets and set 0 for x and y, you will see layer C is placed in a 0-point border of layer B. Just as when I set the position of this layer on 0, it was placed in its 0-point border. I used transform anchor point and place it in the center of layer B. Now, what is the difference between toComp and toWorld? The only difference is that toComp is for 2-dimensional layers, whereas toWorld is for 3-dimensional ones. For example, I make this layer 3D. And I also make layer B, which is the parent layer for C in position 3-dimensional. Let me create a camera to make it clear and make layer A 3D. As you see, the 0 value of layer C is different from layer B. To correct it, I have to change toComp to toWorld. Notice, W in world should be typed in capital. You see, now layer C is on layer B exactly. They match in X, Y, and Z axis. Now I deactivated 3-dimensionality and delete the camera. If you don't want the layer C to be parented to layer B and only want to get position of layer B in comp space, you should create a text first. Open text, Alt-click on source text, using pickwhip, parent source text to layer B. Then type .toComp and in parentheses transform anchor point. And now as you see in the text, there are 2 numbers for X and Y. I put it here. This in fact should be the location of B null object. Let me enter the same numbers for C null object position. Now layer C in 0 points of B null object, whereas I wanted layer C to be on the anchor point of layer B. To do it accurately, I copy the expression this comp layer B and put it in the beginning of this transform and type a dot so that it shows the position of anchor point of layer B in the comp space. Now the position of layer B in layer space is 350 by 50, but in comp space it is 960 by 540. Let me change it to 960 by 540. As you see, layer C is now located on the anchor point of layer B. And it is not parented. You can easily move it. So using a text layer, I could get the location of layer B in comp space. As I said earlier, toComp is used when you want to get the position of a layer parented to another layer in comp space. Now, if you want to do the opposite, that is, to parent a layer in comp space to a layer in layer space. Let me hide these layers. This is an example. Here I have a blue circle which is in a shape layer along with 2 other circles in this layer. All 3 circles are in layer space. I want to parent the blue circle to the null object in comp space. The null object moves like this, and I want to parent the blue circle to it. To do this, the first thing that comes to mind is to open the transform of the middle ellipse and parent its position to the position of null object. As you see, this shape is now in layer space, because otherwise x should not be 0. I said when the x position of the layer is 0 in comp space, it should be here. But the x of the blue circle is 0, whereas it is here. It means the blue circle is in layer space, not in comp space. Let me parent it to the position of null object. You see, it has moved here and it is not right, because it should have been in the position of the null object. And if I play it, you see it is moving here. This is not right. To do the opposite of toComp, I mean parent the object in layer space to the layer in comp space, I should do the opposite of toComp and type fromComp. Open the parentheses and close it here. As soon as I finish the expression, you see the circle layer is placed in a null location. Okay, let me play it. As you see, the circle in a layer space is parented to a layer in comp space. Now that you are familiar with layer space, comp space, toComp, toWorld, and fromComp, let's go back to the previous example. The particle is here now. Let me put it here. I want to parent the position of particle to null object, which is parented to head spray layer. The null object layer is parented to another layer, so it is in layer space. But the position of particle is in comp space. To parent a layer in comp space to a null object in layer space, I have to use toComp command. I open the position of particle. I alt-click and activate the expression. First, I use pickwhip to parent it to the null object layer. Then type dot toComp. Choose the layer again. Then type transform anchor point. And then close the parentheses of toComp and left click. You see the position of particle is on the anchor point of the null object. Let me play it to see how it works. You see the animation is correct now and particle matches the movement of the spray. Since this lesson is about parenting, we'd better deal with parenting point to null object or null object to point. For example, I create a shape on 3 points and I want to parent each of them to a null object, so that when null objects move, the points move as well. To do this, After Effects by default has put a script in Windows section called Create Nulls from Path. You can either parent points to null or parent null to point. To do this, you should open Shape, Contents, Shape, select the path, and then choose Point Follow Nulls. As you see, the shape points is parented to null objects. You can do the opposite and nulls follow the points. And when you move the points, the nulls also move. Good luck!